Hey, sports fans and SJR community. Welcome to Knights Connect. I'm Liam Fahey, and I'm joined by Cahill Donahue. We're here today to do our first in a series of episodes based on the upcoming NFL mock draft. With the developments of the NFL offseason, namely free agency and the NFL Combine, the look of the upcoming rookie class is more interesting than it ever has been. And today, we have our very first mock draft. Cahill, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Can't complain, man.
All right. So what we're doing is we're gonna go down the whole mock draft to what we think we do and what we want to do, kind of a mixture, and go from there. All 32 teams. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Today we're not pulling any trades.
Nope.
And you're gonna take the even numbers. I'm gonna take the odd numbers.
Yep.
And I think that from there we'll get a pretty interesting first look at what a mock draft could look like. Not the most complicated of mock drafts. Certainly not exactly how it will end up, but definitely an idea of what we think the stratosphere people are going. And let's just hop right in and get started. And I think that the number one overall pick, especially with the moving of Justin Fields this week, has never been easier. I don't know about you, but I was never somebody who was conflicted on that. I think that basically as soon as the Panthers ended up giving the Bears the number one overall pick, I didn't think there was much of a choice. I think that when you have Caleb Williams in front of you, and for me, he is the number one overall quarterback in the draft. Maybe not the number one overall prospect, because that guy Marvin Harrison Jr. is pretty special. But you know, quarterback is so important. Fields, you have to make a decision of whether you're going to extend him or you're going to cut him.
Yeah.
And Caleb not only has a higher ceiling, but you can restart the quarterback clock. I think it's just about the easiest it can get. I think you go Caleb Williams number one overall.
He's walking into a great
Yeah,
scenario with
Keenan Allen, don't
Allen
remind me.
and
Yeah, I know. Brutal as a Chargers fan.
So,
Truly brutal.
yeah. Let's move on to pick 2.
Yeah.
With the Commanders, they just traded Sam Howell for a couple picks to Seattle. Don't stress it. Pick the best prospect right there. Drake May from UNC. He
Yeah,
right there.
totally agree. And my question to you is, I know that you've seen and I've seen a lot on Twitter and a lot of socials, this buzz that maybe Jaden Daniels goes ahead of Drake May, and there's a lot of this complaint, namely on some of Drake May's erratic throws and decision making. Can you talk a little bit about how special the prospect Drake May is? I mean, in my opinion, he'd go in just about go number one in just about any class.
I mean, he's a solidified 2. He's right below Caleb Williams. And I think he is very far off from Jaden Daniels and the other quarterbacks. He's everything you want in a quarterback. He makes the tight throws. He does all you want. So
Especially those
Don't
throws
stress
over
it.
the middle, which I mean,
That
he
middle
was
pass.
by far the best in college football on throwing over the middle and in those tight spaces. That's really important. Now, when you get to number 3, this is where you start to talk about things that aren't necessarily totally locked in, right? Like you've heard some stuff about maybe the Patriots will move around, maybe the Vikings with that second trade up will want to get into that that number 3 overall pick, because I don't think that there's a chance that 1 and 2 move, especially now, like I said, with Fields moving around. But 3, especially not having in our opinion at least, one of those top 2 guys, and I do think Jaden's in a different tier than those two. Especially not having either one of those guys there, there is this possibility that the Patriots could want to move around because they do basically have an entire roster to rebuild.
Yeah.
That being said, we're not trading today, and it doesn't really matter because I think that the right decision for the Patriots is to go Jaden Daniels at 3. As different of a prospect he is from those top 2 guys, he is, in my opinion, pretty special, and he did have one of the greatest Heisman seasons of all time. Especially with the season that Lamar Jackson just had, that kind of quarterback is now becoming a pretty important commodity in today's NFL.
Got to start the rebuild with the quarterback.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. And moving on to pick 4, the Cardinals. They had a really interesting year with Kyler being out half the year, and they came back. He did very well, but I think he is their franchise guy.
I think they think he's their franchise guy, which is the biggest thing.
Should be. They were 26th in the league in passing. Trey McBride was their top receiving. Second was Marquise Brown. He's not on the team anymore. You got to go with the best wide receiver prospect of all time, Marvin Harrison Jr.
I think so too. I think that he is the best wide receiver prospect of all time. I mean, there's no flaw in his game. The adjustments to the ball mid catch. I mean, the size, the speed, the athleticism, the IQ on the game, the route running ability. There's nothing wrong with him as a prospect, and he's the only prospect in the draft. To me, that is that way. So Marvin Harrison Jr. to me is the right pick. And my team, the Chargers, are at 5. Now, I think the Chargers are going to do everything they can to trade out of 5. Even with moving Keenan Allen and cutting Mike Williams, which I mean, don't even get me started on the Keenan Allen thing. But as perplexing as that was to leave Justin Herbert with no weapons, I think they're gonna. This is a wide receiver, and we'll see this for the rest of this draft. I think this is a wide receiver dense draft class. I think that's also why some teams made decisions to cut certain receivers.
Yeah.
The one that comes to my mind would be Jacksonville, not re-signing
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley because I think that they have a chance at a Brian Thomas or something like that later on in the draft. I think the Chargers, there are these top three guys, right? There's Marvin, there's Rome, and there's Malik in no particular order. We can talk about Rome versus Malik, but I think the Chargers are going to move out of 5. They're going to do everything they can to move out of 5 because they need a receiver, but they also need cornerbacks. They need a right tackle. Harbaugh wants to reinvent the entire run game. But we're not doing these moves today.
Nope.
And they did create a massive, massive hole for themselves in the form of cutting Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is obviously a mega alpha receiver. And one of the greatest Chargers receivers of all time. So now you've created this hole for yourself. And I think that if you're going to stay at 5, it needs to be solved with the receiver, even though those great offensive line prospects are there. The long and short is you're looking at Malik Neighbors versus Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze has done a lot of work for himself recently to push himself up boards, especially competing at the combine. I mean, he really... he's a standout in this class, and he has become a lot of people's wide receiver too. I'm still going Malik Neighbors. I think that the Chargers have been missing explosivity for a very long time, and I think that Malik Neighbors is a route running genius who would just about go in number 1 of any receiver in any class, except for maybe the one that had Jamar Chase in it. I think that he's exceptional, and I'd go Malik Neighbors if I'm staying at 5 for the Chargers.
He is a solidified number 2. But now moving on to 6, I think the Giants. It's really dependent on what happens at 5. They could go Brock Bowers if he's there. They could go Rome Odunze if he's there, or Malik Neighbors, one of those 3. But I think they go with the best tight end prospect of all time, Brock Bowers.
No kidding. So Brock Bowers over Rome.
Yeah.
Brock Bowers over Rome. Now, I've listened to a couple of podcasts recently, which I like this idea. They refer to Brock Bowers as like weapon out of Georgia rather than tight end prospect out of Georgia.
More wide receiver.
He plays a lot on the outside. He plays a lot in the slot. Really, it was the way I saw it is like, imagine if like Kyle Juszczyk had better hands and they played him as a receiver, and he was also a better prospect. I love Brock Bowers. For a long time, I wanted Brock Bowers to be a Charger. And I don't think that it's necessarily rich to have him in that top 10 because, like I said, I see him more as a weapon than I see him as a tight end prospect. But I am surprised. Brock Bowers over Odunze.
Yeah.
Is there anything specific that makes you push Bowers over Odunze?
I think they have such like a young receiving core for the Giants, and Darren Waller is getting older.
And they're going to cut him, it looks like.
Yeah. He is a cap casualty.
Yeah.
So I think best to go tight end.
Fair enough. Yeah, and he's a very malleable piece. I mean, the only other thing that I would think of is I would think of those guys, or I would think of a Joe Alt who's still on the board. But the fact that Bowers gets taken there creates a really interesting situation for Tennessee.
Yeah.
Because Tennessee, Brian Callahan has actually been, to me, their obvious need is they clearly need a lineman. But Brian Callahan has also had moments where he said that he would almost prefer the weapon. And having Rome fall to him at 7 here, I mean, again, I think that Rome is an alpha who would go in just about any receiver class. And I don't think that I'm being hyperbolic. I think that this is a exceptional all-timer level receiver class. That being said, there's an exceptional all-timer level left tackle prospect in this class whose name is Joe Alt, who is an athletic freak who is about 6'8". He's one of the tallest players to ever go into the NFL combine. And his combine really was exceptional. And I think that because of that, I need to take Joe Alt at pick number 7 here to shore up that left side of their line with Alt and Skoronski.
See how Will Levis does.
Yeah, right?
Like those pieces. I'm really excited to see him. But 8, they got a new head coach, Raheem Morris.
Yeah, the Falcons, right?
Yeah. But they also had a huge free agency. They had Darren Waller, Rondell Moore, Kirk Cousins.
It's a big one.
Yeah, but something that really lacked last year was their defense. Especially their sacks and rushing yards. They're 21st in sacks, 20th in rushing yards. You got to go edge. I'm going Dallas Turner.
You're going Dallas Turner, number one
yeah.
overall edge. So I've recently been going back and forth between Dallas Turner and Jared Verse. And I think today, right now, I might go Verse, but Dallas Turner is just like a special athlete. I mean, that combine was crazy, and he was productive in college. One of the most productive linemen in all of college football. He can also be dropped into a little bit of a little bit of coverage. He plays some linebacker. I definitely don't hate Dallas Turner at that number 8 spot.
Yeah.
But again, I'm shocked to see Rome Odunze fall, and that leaves me with maybe the easiest pick of all time, which is I'm gonna take Rome Odunze to the Bears at 9. I think that this will be the best situation a rookie quarterback's ever gone into. A receiver core or a weapons core that includes DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, who might end up being the best of all of those weapons, and DeAndre Swift, and a guy like Cole Kmet, who I like, and Gerald Everett, who's his own, sort of weapon, who's a very, very excellent athlete, even if he wasn't all that, healthy for the Chargers. I just think that Rome is so good that he can't drop lower than 9. I think that if he's there, the Bears have to be biting his hand off to get him. What do you got here?
That's a great trio. But pick 10, as a Jet fan, all-season key was protect Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
We know what happened last year. We saw what happened to Zach Wilson under a terrible offensive line. They went out and they got Tyron Smith, a freak at the tackle position. They also got Morgan Moses. He's really good. 75.
Excited.
Yeah, 75 PFF score in both passing and rushing last year. One of only a few players to do that. But even though they do have 2 offensive tackles, I'm going another offensive tackle because they are both on 1-year deals. They're both 33. I think it's just in the better interest to also go with Olu Fashanu. And also, Tyron Smith has some injury concerns.
Right.
With that MetLife turf, it might not go well.
That's for sure. That's for sure. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, so I'm going Olu Fashanu.
So Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. I think that definitely I'd go left tackle play over right tackle play. So Olu's the right thing for me. I have seen in the last couple of weeks a lot of people moving. I feel like at the top of, when the draft started to get talked about earlier in the season, it was very much like this is a strong tackle class. There are 2 guys at the top, a left tackle, 2 left tackles, and then it's a right tackle class. And I think Olu is was one of those top 2 guys.
Yeah.
And then now it seems like Joe Alt has separated himself, and Olu's being pushed down boards a little bit, even under guys like Fuaga. But I think that the left tackle play in the Jets is such a needy position that it needs to be taken there. Now at pick 11 here, the Vikings need a quarterback.
Yeah,
you can't only have Sam Darnold, and I think what's important is that they think they can't only have Sam Darnold, and I'm gonna go just about the most rumored move of the past couple of weeks in the offseason, which is I'm gonna take JJ McCarthy to the Vikings, and this is a move of what I think will happen, and rather not really what I necessarily would want to happen. If I'm a Vikings fan here, I would like, in my opinion, behind Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr. throws the best ball in the draft. He has his injury concerns, but I also don't know that I'd be moving up to take the 4th quarterback in this draft. And I think that that's what's going to happen. I think JJ has had exceptional interviews. I think JJ's a good athlete, but there has to be some questions having to do with his cognitive abilities on field and his reads on field. And I think that we'll see some of that happen, but if we get the chance to have JJ sit for a little while and adjust to NFL practices and adjust to NFL experience, I think maybe that JJ can be successful, and I think that that's what they will do, and I think that they'll probably move up from 11 to do it.
At pick 12, Broncos, they obviously need a lot of positions. They released Russell Wilson, they released Justin Simmons, and they traded Jerry Jeudy. You got to go quarterback. You start all rebuilds with a quarterback, so you know what you have. Take the best available, and I think the best available is Bo Nix.
Yeah.
I think he is better than Michael Penix.
Yeah.
And I do think Bo Nix is also better than JJ McCarthy.
I think that Penix has certain certain pieces of his game that make him more alluring than Nick's. Namely, I just think that arm talent is exceptional and that accuracy is exceptional. But Bo Nix definitely has his claim, in my opinion, to the number 4 overall quarterback in the draft.
Definitely.
But I think that just based off of what is coming out of NFL camps is why I
Yeah.
push McCarthy over him. Also, McCarthy is a little younger just because Nick spent so much
Yeah,
time in college. But I think maybe that could end up being an advantage. I think that kind of experience and maturity will be important for him. Now, you get away from the quarterback picks here, in my opinion, because the Raiders did sign Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, I think, in their opinion, is a good enough quarterback room to go
Yeah.
into the next year with and not have to, chomp at the bit here in the first round, especially with 5 quarterbacks already off the board.
Yeah.
And so at pick 13, I'm looking back at the defense. And mainly I'm looking at somebody to help Max Crosby out. Max Crosby out in terms of being a pass rusher. And I think that the best pass rusher that's still on the board has to be either Jared Verse, who I said I
Yeah.
liked more than Dallas Turner earlier, or Byron Murphy from Texas as a defensive interior player. And I think that in this particular situation, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Raiders who signed Christian Wilkins. No.
Yes.
Yes.
They did.
So
They signed
with that
big
being the
contract.
case, and they just spent big on that defensive tackle position. That says to me that we're gonna trust Christian Wilkins. We're gonna move away from the defensive tackle position, and so because of that, I'm picking Jared Verse at number 13 here to the Raiders.
Yeah, moving on to 14. Saints. I feel like they should really go offensive tackle here. Andrews Pete is not coming back. He was on their left side. He's on a visit with the Titans today. I think they should really go best available offensive tackle. And I see Talise Fuanga being the best available. So you got to go him.
I agree.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. When you get to number 15, I think that you have to start thinking about secondary, specifically for the Colts, and secondary or receiver prospects.
Yeah.
Now, the secondary, in my opinion, is the more weak, but the receivers are the better prospects. However, I do think that the secondary, there are good enough cornerbacks that are still on the board that for me, taking one of those cornerbacks is necessary. And my number 1 cornerback in the class as a player is Cooper DeJean. But what I think they'll take is Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo,
Interesting.
who I think will end up going as the number 1 cornerback off the board. He tested like a freak. His numbers, I know he was playing for Toledo. His numbers were incredible. I think they'll end up going Quinion Mitchell at number 15.
Interesting. For 16, Seattle. Mike McDonald, new head coach. When you bring in somebody who's coming off an amazing year on defense for the Ravens, you got to go defense. The Ravens had the most sacks last year. I think they should definitely go edge. So Verse, he's still available. You got to go him.
Oh, Verse isn't available.
He is.
I took Verse at 13.
Oh,
yeah.
So now you got to go best defensive line, Johnny Newton.
Yeah.
From Illinois.
Johnny Newton, I love. Johnny Newton, I love, and I think I love Johnny Newton almost as a better prospect than than Byron Murphy, who I argued about earlier. So I think that's a totally fair pick, and I'm a big fan of that. At number 17, you get to the Jaguars, and the Jaguars are one of the weirdest teams to draft for, in my opinion. Their needs are all very vague until they fail to re-sign Calvin Ridley. Then that decision comes along, and for me, I'm like, okay, well, they're going to just take the best. Originally, it was like they're going to take the best player off the board. Now, I just think they're going to take the best receiver on the board, and the best receiver on the board for me separates himself, and he is an obvious choice. The best receiver on the board is Brian Thomas from LSU, who I think is completely exceptional, amazing, obviously as an athlete, amazingly productive, even with an offense that included Malik Neighbors. I'd be thrilled if I was a Jaguars fan.
Now at pick 18, the Bengals, they had a really good chance to surround Joe Burrow with some great talent, but they decided to win a lot of games towards the end of the stretch. If they lost those games, that would have been huge. So I think they go defensive back here. They did not have the best pass defense in the NFL. They allowed the 5th most passing yards, the most yards per reception in the league, and I think someone who could help that is Cooper DeJean from Iowa.
Love it. Love it. Now, the Rams here at 19 were very, very fortunate, I think, to have a player like Byron Murphy drop into their laps. Obviously, Aaron Donald just retired a week ago. That is a game-changing move for their draft plan. I mean, that creates one of the biggest holes in the NFL. As
Yeah.
you know, as up in his age, Aaron Donald was getting, I think he was about 32.
Still at the top of his game.
He's still at the top of his game. He's still one of the very
All
best
pro.
defensive players in the draft. And for me, I have to move to replace that Aaron Donald hole. And the way you do it is you draft another defensive interior